When we left off, you were talking about the beginning of your friendship with Jay Ward.
Right.
How did that friendship go on throughout the years?
Well, we always stayed very close. We would. Uh, I'm trying to think back. As I say, we he he and I went through to the same grammar school, same junior high school, and both went to University High School, and then but he was when it came to going to college, he went into college a year uh, ahead of me. So uh, he was the class of, well, I would have been, he was class of 41 and I was class of 42. And um, but even in high school, he and I were in business. We sold Christmas trees a couple of years, and but that was a seasonal business. It didn't seem to be enough to build a career on. And then when we got into college, we made a deal with the art music shop where we could go to fraternities and sororities and offer the latest hit records for at a discount of maybe $1 or something. But in any event, the it wasn't a great opportunity to make money, but we both liked to play bridge, and we found that if you went to a sorority and said, anybody interested in these hit records, and they say no, but do you either you guys play bridge? And so it was a way to meet girls at a sorority. So that was a part of our world. But Jay had joined a fraternity, Abracadabra, which was a fraternity at Cal, and so he got them to pledge me when I came along. So we were in fraternity brothers and did a lot of things. And we'd go up to Tahoe in summers and spend time up there. And both Jay had an old, what did he have? He had a Stutz Bearcat, I think. I had a Willis Knight. They're both of 1924 vintage. It looked like a Laurel and Hardy cars, and so life was just a lot of fun in those days.
If someone had never met Jay Ward, how would you describe him?
In what way?
Both personally and professionally. What kind of person was he?
Jay had a marvelous sense of humor. I mean, he loved to play pranks and jokes and things. I remember he had a little MG with a right-hand drive and one of those tiny little ones. And he had a dog named Brandy, a big Saint Bernard. And he got one of those little wheels that you stick on, and Brandy would sit on the left in the left side there, where ordinarily a driver would be with his paws on the wheel. And Jay would drive around in this, and people would do a double take, that dog driving the car. He was and at college he developed a team we were members, Lute Nichols and Jay and some of the others, called the Meadowbrook Athletic Club. And so we'd play intramural sports, and actually one year the Meadowbrooks won the Gold Cup. there was no Meadowbrook Athletic Club. It was just a made-up name. But there in Harmon Gym is the trophy with the Meadowbrook Athletic Club as the winner of the intramural sport. So that was basketball. But it was just a lot of fun.
Did you guys ever get into trouble together? Yeah.
I never admitted it. No, I don't think so. We it was. No, I don't think so. Those were pretty innocent times compared with current times. We didn't drink and smoke, and maybe we went with girls that did, but no, it was very innocent.
And what university was this?
University of California.
Is that at Berkeley?
At Berkeley, yeah, UC Berkeley, yeah.
And you had talked a little bit about the formation of Television Arts Productions. You had talked about contacting him.
Yeah.
To start it with you. Can you talk about the formation of the company? How that came about for you?
Well, as I say, I really wasn't sure he would be interested in, because, as I say, he had opened up this real estate business and had this disastrous. But Jay was very good at hiring somebody, the right person. A fellow named Dave Carr. He hired Dave to handle the running the business while he was recovering, and but I was quite surprised when I approached him with the idea. I thought I'd have to talk him into it, and it wasn't that hard at all. In fact, he had to convince me that it was a good idea. But anyway, so he set about doing it, and we did get an office just temporarily over at 111 Sutter Street in San Francisco to publicize our plans and our hopes. And then shortly after we moved over to the studio in back of my house on Stewart Street in Berkeley.
Was that before or after you had a deal?
Well, he and I had made an agreement that we would pursue it. And no, I think probably it was all part of the same deal. We decided, Jay was, as I say, Jay had gone to Harvard Business School. He knew how to run a business. And so he was handling the mechanics of incorporation and so on. I think we incorporated. It was probably it was a case of should it be Ward and Anderson or Anderson and Ward, and so we decided on Television Arts as a compromise, and nobody would be running second fiddle. So, but there was that was the plan, and then Jay pursued went about trying to find sponsorship through. And there was a fellow named Jerry Fairbanks who was the NBC film advisor, and Jay approached him, and he came up and looked us over, and by then we had set up the studio, and we were making some, well, I guess you would call it. Our test films to show what our competency was, and he said, "Yeah, I think these guys can do it," and so he closed the deal.
And what deal was that?
That would have been 1940, late or maybe early 49. It was it was still 48, I think.
Who was the deal with?
It was with, theoretically, it was at first it was to be with NBC, but Fairbanks decided that it would be better. He was hired by NBC as their advisor. He decided to take it out on his own. So so Fairbanks became the producer of the series, and our deal with him was just to supply the film.
What was Jerry Fairbanks' history? Had he worked in
Well, he had
anything
had a couple of shows. He had a thing called Speaking of Animals or Talking of Animals. He had some other shows that he had produced, but he I don't think that he had any intention of getting involved in production itself. We were to supply the films, and he had made a deal with NBC to borrow money from them to produce it, and that later would turn into a situation where he went bankrupt. I think I may have shown you some of that. That came later after we had produced 195 episodes, and then after that there was no renewal, so we were waiting kind of in the wings to go on after that.
Okay, we'll talk about that a little later, but I want to talk to you about that test film. What was involved in pitching your ideas to the networks? What did you use?
Well, we actually produced a sample of an episode. Our original idea was to have it called the comic strips of television, and there would be not just one, but just like a newspaper, where there would be several films. And we also anticipated that maybe there would be other studios that would join us, so that it would become not just our property alone, but it would be there would be a comic page for an hour or half hour or something of daily episodes. Our thought was to produce five episodes a week. And it was not an easy task. I don't think we finally got up to the point where we were able to produce 4 a week. So we had to work well ahead of time to make up enough. And again, when at the end of 195 episodes, we had been we did 65 episodes on the first deal, and that would be 13 weeks, 5 a week. And then we waited to see if they would renew, and they did. This is NBC, renewed again, and we produced another 65. Then there was a longer waiting period before they agreed to go on with a third. And that would make it 195. And after 195, they just didn't seem to be, there wasn't enough money coming in to pay for it. So they didn't renew. And at that point, that was when that was 1951. And Jay went back to real estate, and I went out and got a job in an advertising agency.
And this was the production of Crusader Rabbit.
That was all Crusader Rabbit. There were none of the other things we submitted at that time were in production. They were just we had made some samples, and storyboards and things, but that was all to come later.
So Crusader Rabbit was supposed to be part of the comic strips of television?
Right. And we had actually designed 4 or 5 different stories, but the only one that NBC accepted was the Crusader. So that was we were stuck with just 5 minutes, and as a result, maybe if the show had been longer, and it would have been something people could program into, but we were just dropped in on other people's shows, like Romper Room or some other. They'd just have sequence, a 5-minute sequence in another show. So we didn't really have our own program as such. But we were in a lot of areas. I think we got into 50 or 60 areas around the country where they were running. NBC would make a deal.
Talk about the concept of Crusader Rabbit. What was the premise of it?
Well, Crusader was, as I think I said, it was a parody, a takeoff on Don Quixote and his compatriot Sancho Panza. So we had a rabbit and a tiger to play the part. And the rabbit, we switched personalities so that the rabbit was the aggressive creature, and with a tiger-like approach, and the tiger was more of a sweet, lovable creature. So it was just a switch on personalities to make it a little more interesting. But the whole programs would be based on a crusade. So a crusade might run, well, it would always be 5, 10, 15, maybe 15 episodes or 20 episodes. And the adventures were silly, I don't know whether we would have, the first one was, there's something to do with the Texans were trying to get rid of jackrabbits. So Crusader went off to try to take on the state of Texas. That was so long ago, I don't remember how it came out, but as we were evolving, and we were learning with each new gimmick how to better perform and better achieve what we were looking for, and getting our artists to understand and the whole process. It was a learning. We learned a lot, and maybe toward the end we were really getting a little bit professional about doing it. But it was very much a learning process.
What was the process of animation for Crusader Rabbit?
Well, it was very limited. Did we not discuss the Baby Weems and that? Oh, I thought we talked about Baby Weems. I had seen this.
Well, actually, we did The Reluctant Dragon. Was that
Huh?
The Reluctant Dragon? Okay, well, you did. You
Yeah.
did.
And that gave me the thought of a way to tell a story without having to depend on, and that was what we were working towards. But each of our departments, we were trying to do it on a shoestring, and for example, our first camera stand was really, we got a war surplus lathe bed and an aerial photography camera, enlarger, and mounted. But then after we'd been at it about 3 months, we realized we had to get a real camera stand. So we got an Eddie Bowles animation camera stand, which was really a state-of-the-art item, and it enhanced and got us. We were able to really get a professional result on it. So little by little, we were learning what we were doing. But it was it was a lot of fun. It was just so much hard work because we had to work day and night to just turn out what little we could do.
What were some of the specific techniques, though, that you used to accomplish limited animation?
Well, for one thing, and these were devices that Terrytoons had used to an extent. We would always, the action would always be off camera. You would just have your, well, that's the reason you have two characters. One is watching while the other is involved in whatever's going on. So you would just have hear the sound effects of whatever was happening, and you would just have the other character standing there watching in amazement. And then when the whatever was happened, then you would cut to the result of whether it was just a smoking result, but that was one of the gimmicks. The other was to have a narrator who could explain what was going on. One of the things that we developed was called cycles, where you just have your character doing a walking cycle, say you're just continually walking and walking, and all you have to do is pan. You just use the same animation. You just pan the scene behind it and keep it going, and so it gives the illusion of walking. But there just was it was very helpful to have a narrator who would say, "You remember when we left off last time, our hero had been forced to," and it was a way of reusing the same animation from the day before. And so there was just a lot of gimmicks so that you could tell your story and leave, but each episode would end up in a cliffhanging situation, just as with the old Saturday matinee technique of the kids would have to go back and see what happened next week. So a lot of people, we figured, would have to tune in just to find out how our characters got out of one bad spot and into another. But that was the format.
Now, since you were creating this for television, were there any things that you had to do specifically to accommodate for television?
No, we, as I say, we were in black and white, which made it a lot easier than trying to do color, and but I think we were shooting it on 35 millimeter, and actually for the processing, we pre-recorded the action before we animated, and then we did send the film and the narration down to LA to be processed. So we didn't handle the actual mix of the animation.
Was there anything special that you had to do with the drawings for television?
Well, because of the fact that the visual image of the on television in those days was very grainy, very very hard. If you had Disney type fine line animation, you probably wouldn't have been able to see what it was, so we had to use bold black lines and heavy. It was an accommodation. Television, of course, nowadays is wonderful, but in those days it was pretty primitive.
How were the stories written?
Well, we had a let me see. I would write the stories, and I would but I had help with doing some of the storyboarding. Jerry Ray was a big help in doing some of the drawing, and Joe Curtin was very helpful in coming up with gags and so on. So it was a case of you would have you only were dealing with a 5-minute episode, so we wouldn't be that hard to come up with getting our characters out of one bad mess and into another. But the thing was to try to keep it light and have some of the characters, our villains, were kind of a lot of fun because, and Joe was very good. Joe Curtin was very good at that. He'd come up with the Raja of Rincewater or the Black Bilge, the pirate. Wonderful names, and so they would be very much caricatured characterizations. It was great.
How were some of the gags thought up?
Beg pardon?
How were some of the gags thought up?
I don't know. We did have a gag file, and we would steal from every anything you saw that you thought you could maybe use, but a lot of the humor was more in the storytelling. It was more verbal humor than slapstick, because we couldn't afford slapstick.
Did you have an audience in mind?
Well, no, we didn't have a laugh track, if that's what you meant. We had music. We had our theme, which was public domain. 10 Little Indians was our theme that we played at the beginning of the episode, and we did cut in some sound effects, but basically it was just like what Roy Whaley, who was our narrator, he did a great job of kind of creating an atmosphere of storytelling.
Were you trying to aim the programs for anyone in particular, for adults or children? Or?
Well, we were criticized. I think everybody said our humor was too adult for kids. And our feeling was that kids are a lot smarter than people admit. And I think that, but a lot of our audience, we found, were indeed adults. It wasn't like if we were coming in on the tail end of the 6 o'clock news, why a lot of our audience were probably adult.
Okay, let's stop here to change the tape.